Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's your man Soul here. Welcome back to the channel. You know what it is when you clicked it, and obviously judging by the screen and my title, we're doing a 10-man raid comp setup for WOTLK Classic Phase Uno. And I want to say, I got bombarded with like DMs and direct messages and battle.net messages on if I was going to do a 10-man, I should do a 10-man, what do I think about 10-man, stuff like that. And it's weird because a lot of people didn't comment on the 25-man channel, so I didn't think there was much of a need for a 10-man video. But I went on vacation, I came back, and I saw a whole bunch of messages about it. So here we are. But without further ado, let's jump into the video. First things first, I want to thank all of the new subscribers. Like I said, I did go on vacation. I came back to so many new subscribers, so everyone out there, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for commenting, thank you for subscribing. And if you are new to the channel and you like what you see, please consider liking and subscribing at the end of the video. Let's make it down the long road to 1K. But without further ado, let's jump into this 10-man raid comp setup. All right, so as you can see, I already got kind of the classes listed out here. I'm gonna do like 3 variants because I don't think there's just one ideal super best 10-man raid setup you can do. There are multitudes of setups you can do. So I'm going to do 3 variants. Variant 1, 2, 3. I'm going to have timestamps in the description. That's just like a normal thing now. I'm just always going to put timestamps in the video. But yeah, so let's talk about variant 1. So one thing I will say across pretty much all of my 10-man videos, or not videos, my variants. One, I want to say this is really for guilds who don't really have an interest in 25-man. They're just doing multiple 10-mans and might do a 25-man later down the line. But in phase 1, they're just sticking to 2 10-man groups, or maybe just 1 10-man group, depending on the size of the guild. So if you are in that scenario and in that raid environment, I think this video is going to be good. So variant number 1 is the one we have here set up, and I think the thing that doesn't change between each of the variants is Protection Paladin, Disc Priest, Holy Paladin. These 3 are pretty much mandatory for 10-man content, especially like speedy 10-man clears. Like the synergy between Disc and Holy are just too strong to pass up, especially in smaller groups. When you can get out a lot of absorbs plus very strong splash healing from the Holy Paladin via glyph of Holy Light. Like it's just unmatched. And the Protection Paladin is the best tank in the game, so having the best tank and their utility spill over to 10-man is really good there too. So I think those 3 pretty much are going to be the mainstays out of each 10-man scenario we outlined today. But the other ones are pretty much interchangeable. The one thing I will say, like the one piece of advice I will say about 10-mans, like when you're building your 10-man, is don't overthink it. Don't over optimize. Don't min-max it to the highest degree. Trust me, you're gonna cause yourself a bigger headache, number 1, and it might do more harm than good. Because if you have 70% of your raid group on Vanquisher token, or 60% of your raid group that are casters, and they're all rolling on that one thing or that one item, chances are you're not, like, only one person is going to get it, and it defeats the purpose of a 10-man. The purpose of the 10-man is to be an easier version of the raid to get you geared up. So if everybody's waiting for that one item to drop, congratulations, you just did a whole 10-man run and only 2 people got gear. That's not really what it's for. It's for spreading out the gear, making sure you can get supplementary gear. So when you do, if this is the plan, if you do want to go into 25-man, now you have 10 people who may have came out with a piece of gear at a time. So don't over optimize it. Don't overthink of it. Don't trip off of trying to min-max every single little aspect of your life. Build a group, try to make it balanced as you can. Keep in mind of the tokens that you're covering. Keep in mind of the needs for gear that you're covering, like the strength users versus the agility users versus the intellect users. Keep that in mind and then build your gear up. Don't over complicate things for yourself. But diving more specifically into the classes that I picked. So like I said, Protection Paladin, Holy Paladin, and Discipline Priest are pretty much the mainstays, and the other ones being kind of filler. I would say probably filler number 1, dependent on skill level, dependent on difficulty of whatever this buffed version of Nax we're gonna get. I think the second tank definitely goes to Blood. Not definitely. It can be Blood, or if because Blood is pretty squishy in phase 1, this secondary tank can be a Druid. Now, Druids boast the highest effective health pool. They don't have as great a single target threat as a Blood DK, but they still do good single target threat. They're pretty easy to gear. There's not too much gear overlap, like especially if you have a main Feral Druid and like other leather users, like those two won't clash as much, not as much as they did in like TBC, right? So the Feral Druid can definitely fit into the secondary tank position here if you're not one tanking. I know like back in the olden days, a lot of Nax could just be one tank, then you could just have like a Feral Cat. Oh, where is Feral Cat? There we go. You have like a Feral Cat in like the pseudo secondary tank spot when you needed it, or you could take out the cat for the Frost or Unholy Decay, probably the Unholy Decay here. Yeah, probably Unholy Decay here. But just in case the buff Nax does require you to have like a real like full-fledged tank, I would say you can't go wrong with either Blood or Bear here. Now, for people newer to the roles who may not have played Wrath, who maybe, like I said, new to healing or tanking, the safer bet probably is the Feral Druid. But the better option for the raid group, just because of utility and buffs they provide, is probably the Blood DK. So I choose to be Blood. I just have a soft spot for Blood. But again, those two are interchangeable. And then the DPS, again, you want to keep things spread out. You want to keep things balanced. You want to make sure you still have, necessary buffs. I think the first like staple is definitely your Shaman. I put Elemental here because Elemental does bring pretty strong buffs. Like it still brings the mainstay stuff: Heroism, Flame Tongue Totem, Wrath of Air, Strength of Earth, Wind Fury. It still brings all of that stuff, but it also brings Totem of Wrath. And Totem of Wrath it gives more spell power than Flame Tongue, and it gives an increased critical strike chance to everyone. So you're getting that there, plus you're getting all of the other cool Shaman utility stuff. Plus you're getting spell crit from the Enhanced Shaman, so no longer needing the Boomkin there. So you're getting spell crit, spell haste, and 3% crit from the Totem. So you're getting a lot of high value buffs from just the Elemental Shaman. And Elemental, like I know Elemental and Enhanced are kind of like memes or pseudo memes because they still do good damage. Elemental is still going to pop off in phase 1. A good Elemental Shaman is still going to handle business in phase 1. So don't fret, you can take an Elemental Shaman. But I think Elemental is probably the highest value just because the Elemental Oath buff will buff the 5% crit, whereas you wouldn't get that from Resto or an Enhance. So I think, yeah, Shaman, the Shaman Elemental is the one that I always take. You can take any Shaman. I'm choosing Elemental here. The next one really is the Demonology Warlock. We all know Demonology is the super support caster. You're going to get Demonic Pact, pardon me, you're still going to get Fel Intelligence, you're still going to get all the other stuff like Health Stones and stuff from Demonology, not Fel Intelligence because you're using Thorgard. You thought you got me. No, you're still getting Health Stones, you're still getting Soul Stone, you're still getting Demonic Pact. So you're going to get the cool Warlock stuff, but again, Demonic Pact is just going to increase your healer power, your caster power. And it's a good support buff, so I think Demonology takes it right there. The next one, so I have Assassination here. Now Assassination really doesn't do anything, I'm gonna be honest with you. Assassination is just like a trick spot. The only thing it does bring is that it's a good damage spec. It's bringing its own damage. This Assassination spot ideally can be replaced with anything else, but again, keeping in mind of token balance, of gear balance, stuff like that, the Assassination kind of fits in pretty well. Whereas like the Assassination doesn't have too much overlap with the Survival. There are some things, but it doesn't have too much overlap. It definitely doesn't have too much overlap with the Arms Warrior, and no overlap with everything else. So Assassination is a good fit there. But again, it's not bringing much utility, but it is bringing the utility of I'm a rogue, I can tricks, and I can do a lot of damage. So if you want to like pump, you could bring an Assassination. It's a pretty consistent pumper too. It's not like a slow ramp up. It's get in and go. That's one choice you could make. Another choice you can make is actually bringing a full-fledged Unholy DK. Now again, keeping in mind with token and gear balance, be wary, because if you're bringing in Holy DK, Blood DK, and Arms Warrior, the Blood is a tank, but it still could have some overlap with these two. Unholy and Arms definitely could have some overlap, so just be careful. But yeah, I would say Unholy DK does fit that slot in there pretty well. But I think just for the optimal spread of gear and tokens and stuff like that, Assassination fits the bill, and you're not lacking for damage there. For ranged, I have Arcane and I have Survival here for the other ranged. This is just because, well, one, Arcane and Demonology do have some overlap. It's not too crazy, but you still get pretty high value buffs with Arcane. You still get Arcane Intellect, you get the 3% damage buff, stuff like that. So you do, and you get some really good damage from Arcane. Same thing with Survival. You're getting pretty good damage. You're getting a hunting pack, which is the revitalize or replenishment, not revitalize, replenishment. Jesus, and you're still getting less of gear overlap. There, survival's a male agility wear, no overlap with these guys. Like, so this is a pretty good balanced spread. We'll call this the balanced variant of the 10-man comp. Again, you don't have to follow this. This is, I think, is just one of the more balanced situations where you don't have 4, 5, and 6 people rolling on the same item, right? So I think this kind of fits the bill in terms of balanced variants. And I know like some of you might be looking at like the buffs and debuffs and stuff, and I'm like, oh my god, he has some white spots there, he's missing some stuff. Don't fret about that too much. Like, we have, I want to say, what, 85-90% of this covered, and it's 10-man. So even if we're getting a buff Nax in phase 1, I don't think it's going to be too crazy to where I need to prioritize getting every single buff here. Like, you know what I mean? So I think this fits the bill in terms of a good balanced comp. The next variant is kind of similar to the balanced one, but a little bit more focused on damage. Now, I did say on my balanced variant that the mainstays were Protection Paladin, Holy Paladin, and Disc Priest. But this variant, you can forego the disc and take a Shadow Priest. I know Shadow Priest. I feel like Shadow Priest get like the short end of the stick, and you want to make sure you have a Shadow Priest. You want to make sure you're getting them or giving them opportunities to get gear and stuff like that. So that's kind of what I try to do here. But if we take a look at it for phase 1, right? So this is kind of more on kind of like what you would see on like private server stuff. But I think this fits very well into what would be a 10-man for like your secondary 10-man next group. Like once the primary group is filled, it's like, all right, here's the next group. You can do something like this. So again, Protection Paladin, Holy Paladin, mainstays. Swapped out the disc for the Shadow Priest, and then got a Resto Shaman. Now Resto Shaman might not bring the 5% spell crit like an Elemental Shaman does, but Resto is still a very strong healer in 10-mans, especially with things like the glyph of Healing Stream Totem. It matches perfectly with the splash healing that the glyph of Holy Light does. So these two still are going to perform some really good output healings. Not as much damage absorption obviously, but again, really good just throughput healing that's going to make your 10-mans go really smooth. The next thing I did was I added a Retribution Paladin to it. Now, the Retribution and the Unholy can kind of both operate kind of sort of as the pseudo tanks. Really, the Unholy is there for that. But if the Retribution has a prot off spec or has raid sack spec into it, you can still do some pretty amazing things and speed up your run just by that much, just by having the Retribution spec into a Divine Sacrifice or having the Unholy DK act as your tank on 2 tank fights. But bringing both of these are going to provide a lot of cleave damage, a lot of AoE damage, and just a lot of damage in general. So extra damage, increasing your speed times. The Feral DPS is going to do a lot of single target damage even early on. Like I think I had mentioned that in either my 25-man video or my frequently asked questions, is that Feral is just going to do a lot of damage. They don't have a low point. They always start here and just continue to go up. So Feral DPS is just solid, consistent damage here. The Enhance is going to be able to buff your Unholy, your Feral, and your Retribution, and it's going to do solid damage in and of itself. So this guy's going to make the rest of his melee buddies pretty good. And notice how I have, well, with the exception of the Unholy and the Retribution, who would be looking at gear overlap, these guys aren't really looking at gear overlaps, right? The Enhance doesn't really want what the Feral has. Like, Enhance is weird because it like wants its own set of gear, especially if you're like Spell Hands. Like, you're not looking at the Feral's gear, you're not looking at the Unholy's gear, you're not looking at the Red's gear. So this is I think this is a really good balanced melee comp. And then the same thing can be said for the range. Now I took out the Demonology Warlock and placed it with an Arcane Mage. Well, not really replaced it because it was in the balance side too, but I took out the Demonology Warlock because you're not getting as much value from Demonic Pact here as you would, like what I've said, the first group, only because yes, Demonic Pact does help the healers. I'm not saying it doesn't, but being that the Arcane and the Shadow are the only casters here, and you're missing that third caster, like you're kind of losing value here in terms of clearing like the raid group, right? Because like I said, 10-man, even though it's going to be buffed, it's still supposed to be easy enough to be able to be a consistent gear source for you to be able to get into 25 man. So having demonic pact only affect 2 people versus, well, if 4 people if you include the healers, but again, your spell power is going to be pretty low anyway, and you're already getting the spell power buff from, you're not missing the spell power buff, you're getting it from the Restoration Shaman. So I think demo just didn't fit quite as strongly as the Arcane would here, and the Shadow Priest is just going to bring its own, you know, special shadow buffs, like replenishment from Vamp Touch, like the 3% spell hit increase from Misery. So Shadow Priest is a pretty good utility caster here too. So yeah, I think this is more akin to adding more damage by having the Unholy and the Ret, and just having the Prop Paladin handle the tanking business and being able to kill things a lot quicker. We'll call it like a more damage focused build, but it still has the spread of the gear, the spread of the tokens that you want in the 10 man. Like for here, we only have about 4 people on Conqueror, the 3 Paladins and the Shadow Priest, and then we have 3 Vanks, and then we have 3 Protectors. So I think this is pretty good here. And the final build, admittedly, is really more for like speed running. This is like what you would kind of build out if you're looking at a speed running 10 man. Obviously you kind of put balance and like gear balance, token balance, you know, to the wayside, and opt for as much damage as you could possibly get out of the group, right? So again, Protection Paladin wasn't going nowhere. The Disc Priest has returned, but now we have some new players. We have the Affliction Warlock and we have the Balance Druid. So I just want to say a side note, Affliction, even though I didn't include it in the other 2, can really be slotted into anywhere you want them to be, as far as the balanced or the secondary, the more damage focused variant, right? Affliction is just a good class, so don't think just because I didn't put Affliction there before that it's only good for speedrunning. Like, no, Affliction can be slotted anywhere you feel the need to, especially since we know we're getting some form of a buff Nax where there's going to be potentially longer execute times. The Affliction is just going to shine, has the best execute in the game. So Affliction can be slotted damn near anywhere, but for speedrunning, especially when you want to just shorten down your execute phases, Affliction is going to make that happen for you. Arcane is just really good, especially on the opener, on the burst end. Demonology is going to be able to buff all of these guys because we're running a caster-centric group. Elemental, again, is there for not really for the crit here anymore because we get that from the Balance Druid, but it is bringing a stronger spell power buff than Flame Tongue would in the form of Totem of Wrath. And the Unholy DK really is to help spread the magic damage debuff. I know I had mentioned in my 25-man video that Ebon Plaguebringer effectively does the same debuff as Earth and Moon and Crystal Elements, pardon me. But neither of those 2 other debuffs can be spread to multiple targets not nearly as effectively as Ebon Plague. It's literally you debuff something with your disease, hit Pestilence, and now everything within Pestilence range has it. So Unholy is really there to keep the debuff up consistently on all mobs. Plus, it can definitely continue to act as your secondary tank when necessary. Discipline can handle all of your healing needs, more specifically because it has absorbs, so it can stop damage and kind of get a breather on it for high damage phases. Plus, it has Rapture, which is going to be giving mana return back for Power Word Shield. Plus, you have a lot of support here. You have the Innervate from the Balance Druid. You have Mana Spring Totem from the Elemental Shaman. So you do have support here. So Discipline is going to slot in really well as a solo healer, especially in 10 mans, with its power of absorbs and damage stopping and just ease of playstyle. That's one thing that gets overlooked. Like, ease of playstyle. If something is easy to play and especially in higher difficulty areas, that means you can act more effectively because you're going to act more quickly. Like if there's, you don't want everything to have a complex rotation because that can be the detriment in certain scenarios. But and some people turn their nose up to something being easy, but sometimes you need that easy character to be effective. So I think this piece is a very easy healer and is very effective at what it does, especially in a speedrunning setup. So this is what you will be looking like in terms of your speed running. You could even go, like I've seen, like you could even do something like this where if you don't want to bring 2 Affliction locks, you could take this one out and go a 3rd Arcane Mage. Or if you don't want to bring the I would say you have to bring Elemental. I think Elemental is pretty maybe not mandatory, but pretty substantial in the speed running thing. But let's say you didn't have access to an Elemental Shaman, I would say you could fit a Shadow Priest in there. Shadow Priest will help keep the mana high on these guys. So yeah, but I think Elemental is just like, if you're specifically building for that speedrunning comp, I think Elemental fits quite well. These guys, definitely 3 Arcanes will fit quite well. But I think just to help, because we know we're getting a buff Nax, I think to potentially ease the burden on execute phases, Double Affliction is gonna have the little bit of the higher damage ceiling than bringing just pure damage from pre-execute. And that's really it. So again, like 10 man, it's hard to nail down like what's the one best 10 man comp, because when you have all of these specs to choose from, it's like you can't really nail it down. I mean, if you're looking at my screen now, this is clearly the best 10 man comp. 10 blood decays, nothing's gonna die, right? GG. But anyway, no, it's hard to nail down the exact perfect 10 man comp in my opinion, because there are just so many things, and it just depends on what your focus is. If you're speedrunning, then you go one way. If you're just, you know, trying to balance out 2 10 man groups because you're not interested in 25 man, you go a different way. If the goal is to use 10 man just as supplement gear to eventually fuse 2 10 man groups into a 25 man, then you go another way. So again, I don't think there's an ideal way to do 10 man, but there's definitely ways you can do it to fit your unique situations. That's really it for the video, guys. I had a lot of fun making it. I hope this helps in some way, shape, or form, and if it did, please consider liking and subscribing if you want to see more content from me. I'm going to be dropping, or I do drop pretty consistently, I would say, in my own opinion. But that's really it for the video, guys. As always, you've been great. I've been Soul, and I'm out. Peace.